explain a little bit what Rachel does and how that ties in to our discussion.
Okay, well, Rachel, as you said correctly, was born in Egypt. She lived the first 20 years of her life in Egypt, and then she and her family were expelled from Egypt in 1969 penniless, and then Israel took them in, as Israel did many, many other types of Jews. And for the last 30 years, in addition to being my wife and the mother of my children and grandmother of my grandchildren, she is 66 like I am. She still works for the Kol Israel radio services. She monitors the radio, TV, and computer broadcasts of the Arab world, and she reports back to the newsroom, but these reports go also to intelligence.
Well, she's picking up things all the time that are disturbing. She even picked up, you were telling me, that 9/11 was going to happen well before 9/11 happened. Is that correct?
Correct. And on the wall behind the announcer on the TV in the Arab stations, there were calendars on the wall with pictures of the two towers in New York City in flames. This was years before 9/11. In other words, they knew they were going to do it. We knew they were going to do it, meaning me and my wife. But other than that, people didn't, even in Israel, people didn't want to accept that something like that could happen.
Did she try to tell anybody? I mean, did she try to tell anybody in America this was happening?
Well,
this was going to happen?
She told her bosses in Jerusalem, and they're socialists, people in the Israeli government, and they wouldn't listen. After 9/11, they patted her on the shoulder and said, Rachel, you were right. And she says, I don't want to be told I was right. I wanted you to listen to me when you should have listened to me. Here in America, I was the one who would fly from American local airports around the country. There was no TSA at the time. It was just local security. I said, you guys have no security. You guys are sitting ducks. They're going to destroy your planes and destroy buildings in America. They said, oh, you Israelis are all paranoid.
I believe that we're on a countdown to World War III. I think World War III could be a battle with Islam. I mean, I think that's the new frontier that we have to deal with. And you and I agree on a lot of things. We don't agree on everything. Would you agree that World War III has likely begun, and it will be with the Islamic world?
In my most recent book that just came off the press, I talk about the Europeans, America, and Vatican backing the Sunnis, and the Russians, the Chinese, North Koreans backing Iran and the Shiites. And this is the makings for a perfect storm, world war. I mean, I pray to God it doesn't happen, but obviously, I mean, it is a given that the United States backs ISIS, the United States backs Sunni Islamic regimes, Russia backs Iran and the Shiites. Christian Arab businessmen in East Jerusalem would come up to me and say, why is Obama an ally of the Muslim terrorists who are killing us? And why is Vladimir Putin the savior?
I want to play a soundbite of Benjamin Netanyahu right after the deal was made back on July 14th. And he is desperate sounding. And I'm going to comment on his comments after I play it, and I want to get your comments as well.
Mr. Prime Minister, I'd like to begin by asking you about your conversation with President Obama yesterday. Can you give us the essence of what you told him?
Well, you know, I respect President Obama, and we can respectfully disagree. I thought and I said that this deal poses a great danger to Israel. I believe it poses a great danger to America and the world. When you let the #1 terrorist regime in the world have a sure path to the bomb and hundreds of billions of dollars with which to finance its terrorism around the world, that's not good for any of us.
Do you think that the relationship between Israel and the U.S. has been fractured? Do you feel the president has betrayed you on this issue?
No, look, I think we have a disagreement, and I appreciate the alliance with the United States, the support that we receive from the president, the Congress, the American people, but we have a real disagreement. We think this is not merely a threat to us. We think it's a threat to you as well. You know, just 5 days ago, the so-called moderate president of Iran was at a rally in Tehran in which they burnt American flags, chanting death to America. Iran has killed more Americans than anyone other than Al-Qaeda. Iran is building intercontinental ballistic missiles, not to reach us, they already have those missiles, but to reach every part of the United States. And the supreme leader of Iran says, just the other day, he says the battle against the United States will continue even after the deal. You know, for them, we're the little Satan. You're the great Satan. And now I think they're being empowered to conduct that battle. And I think that this is bad for us, for you, and the world.
Are you going to continue to make that point to members of the U.S. Congress? Will you be lobbying Congress to reject this deal?
Look, I'm making that point to anyone who will listen. I'm making it to you now. And I have to tell you, it's not just my private point. I've just come from the Knesset. We had a session in which I and the opposition leader, the leader of the Labor Party, Isaac Herzog, expressed our disapproval, our opposition to this deal. This cuts across Israel. It's not a partisan issue in Israel. It shouldn't be a partisan issue in the United States. And let me tell you something else. It cuts across Arabs and Israelis in the Middle East. Most of the Arab leaders, whether privately or publicly, think that this is very dangerous to them too. And I would advise this. It doesn't happen very often in history, but when Arabs and Israelis agree, it's worth paying attention.
If you just joined me, you are listening to Understanding the Times Radio. I'm Jan Markell. I have in studio Avi Lipkin, and you can learn more at his website, vicmord.com, vicmord.com. He also goes by the name of Victor Mordecai. And I've worked with Avi for a number of years, been on radio and been with him in other places. Here's a couple of things, Avi, that stand out to me. He doesn't feel betrayed. That's nonsense. They feel betrayed. I'm sure you would agree. He's being polite here if he's going to say they don't feel betrayed. But here's what stood out to me, and I think this is where the disconnect is, and I want your input here, is he's reminding Americans that this Iran thing is a threat to you as well. You're the great Satan. Don't you get it? We're the little Satan. ICBMs are being created that are going to go to your shores, and you and I were talking off air here about that, and I want your input on that.
Well, indeed, in my most recent book, Islamic Revival, I talk about the United States and Europe and the Vatican aligning themselves with the Sunni Muslims who are enemies of Iran. So Iran's primary objective has to be to destroy America, which is the greatest of this Western and Islamic Sunni coalition.
Right, but you were being even more specific about it. I mean, you feel there could be multiple attacks across the country, which many of us feel. To be honest with you, some of us feel that it's partly going to be judgment on America for some of the evil that's come along here in more recent years, going back 30, 40 years, but the evil has been on overdrive here in the last 6 to 8 years.
You know, there are different estimates as to how many Muslims there are in America, Shiites and Sunnis. I think the conservative estimates are 7 million. Louis Farrakhan alone claims 4 million black Muslims, the Nation of Islam. So it's over 11 million. I say it's a lot more. But according to law enforcement, both in America and Canada, they say that 90% of the Muslims in America and Canada are not terrorists. They're peacekeeping, law-abiding citizens. They do support the Islamic takeover of the United States, but only 10%, quote-unquote, are terrorists. So if let's say 7 million Muslims, 10% is 700,000.